My name is Alara, and I am a librarian. At 34, I've built a life around the quiet rustle of turning pages and the comforting scent of old paper and ink. My world is one of order, gentle discovery, and the profound, unassuming power of stories. It's a world that stands in stark, silent opposition to the one I married into 10 years ago, a world of glittering surfaces and unspoken rules, where the value of a person is measured in stock portfolios and social connections. My husband, Liam, is the fulcrum on which these two worlds balance, often precariously. We met in a university library, a detail I've always cherished. He was the brilliant economics student from a family whose name, Blackwood, was synonymous with old Boston wealth, and I was the literature postgrad who believed a well-worn book held more value than a new car. He was charmed by my quietude, and I was captivated by the genuine warmth that existed beneath his polished, preparatory school exterior. His parents, Alastair and Genevieve Blackwood, were less captivated. She has a certain stillness Genevieve had observed during our first excruciatingly polite dinner, her gaze sweeping over my simple linen dress as if it were a curious artifact. The word was not a compliment, it was a diagnosis of my unsuitability. Stillness, in their universe, was stagnation. Despite their thinly veiled disapproval, Liam and I fell deeply in love. Our wedding was a small, intimate affair in a botanical garden, a far cry from the grand society event Genevieve had mapped out. That small act of rebellion set the tone for the decade to come. I would forever be the quiet librarian who had, against all odds, captured their golden boy. The Blackwoods didn't just possess wealth, they were stewards of a legacy. Their sprawling, ivy-covered estate in the exclusive enclave of Port Blossom was more museum than home, each room a testament to generations of accumulated influence. Their summer home on the Cape was a place they visited for a mandatory 2 weeks a year, a line item on their social calendar. Alastair had inherited and aggressively expanded his grandfather's investment firm, ensuring his 2 children, Liam and his older sister Clara, would never know a moment of financial uncertainty. Our daughter, Maya, arrived 2 years into our marriage. Genevieve dutifully posed for photographs with her newest grandchild, the images curated for her social media circle, but the emotional chasm was vast. She doted on Clara's children, who attended the right schools, excelled in the right sports, and understood from a young age which forks to use. Maya, with her gentle spirit and a deep, imaginative inner world, was different. She preferred inventing stories for her dolls over tennis lessons, and her greatest joy was creating intricate, hand-drawn maps of fantastical lands. "She's very much like you, Alara," Genevieve would say, and it always sounded like a gentle lament. As each Christmas approached, a familiar anxiety would begin to coil in my stomach. The annual Blackwood Christmas Eve Gala was less a family gathering and more a command performance. Genevieve orchestrated every detail, from the imported French ribbons on the towering tree to the strategic seating chart that invariably placed me between a distant relative and one of Alastair's business partners. This year, Maya was particularly excited. At 8 years old, her belief in the power of a heartfelt gift was still pure and unwavering. She had spent weeks creating a present for her grandparents, a small, hand-bound book of her own poems and illustrations, titled The Whispering Woods. Despite my gentle warnings not to invest too much hope, she was convinced this gift, a piece of her very soul, would finally bridge the gap. "Do you think Nana Jen will read it to everyone?" she'd asked me the night before, her small fingers carefully tying a simple twine bow around the book. "I think she'll see how much love you put into it, my sweet girl," I answered, a careful, non-committal truth. Liam remained the eternal optimist, the gentle buffer between me and his family's cool indifference. "They're trying, Alara," he would insist after every strained visit. "They just have a different way of showing love." The morning of the gathering, Maya was awake before the sun, her excitement a tangible thing in the quiet of our small home. She insisted on wearing a simple navy velvet dress I had made for her, smoothing its skirt with pride. "It's my storytelling dress," she declared, as if the garment itself held a special magic. The drive to Port Blossom took just under an hour, each passing mile a turn of the screw in my tightening chest. Liam kept up a steady, cheerful stream of chatter, while Maya sat in the back, her precious book held carefully in her lap, rehearsing the words she would say when she presented it. As we turned into the long, gravel driveway, flanked by ancient oak trees and leading to the stately brick facade of the Blackwood estate, Liam reached over and squeezed my hand. "This year will be different," he promised, his voice soft. "I have a feeling." I nodded, not sharing his conviction but loving him for it. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and prepared to step once more into the quiet battleground of a Blackwood family Christmas. The Laurels, as the Blackwoods called their estate, was breathtakingly beautiful and emotionally sterile. A 20-foot fir tree, adorned with antique glass ornaments and shimmering gold ribbons, stood sentinel in the two-story foyer. Garlands of fresh pine and eucalyptus draped over every mantelpiece and doorway, their scent mingling with the faint, clean smell of beeswax polish. It was a perfect Christmas, as envisioned by a luxury magazine, devoid of the charming chaos of real life. As we moved through the grand rooms, a parade of relatives and family friends greeted Liam with loud, affectionate hugs, while offering me polite, measured smiles. Liam's sister, Clara, immediately cornered him, launching into a story about their recent impromptu family ski trip to Gstaad. She didn't ask why we hadn't been there. We both knew the invitation had never been extended. "Elara, you look well," Clara said, finally turning to me. Her eyes did a swift, practiced inventory of my outfit, a simple emerald green cashmere sweater and wool trousers. "That color is bold." "I like green," I replied, a small, foolish defensiveness rising in me. She said, a world of meaning in the single syllable, before turning back to Liam. Liam's brother-in-law, a boisterous man named Richard, clapped him on the back while his wife, a woman cut from the same fine silk as Genevieve, air-kissed my cheeks. "Elara, darling," she trilled. "We missed you at the symphony benefit. But I suppose the library must keep you so busy. It's so admirable how you've kept your little career." The implication was always the same. The other Blackwood women didn't work. My profession, my passion, was framed as a quaint hobby, a peculiar insistence on being ordinary. "I love my work," I said, my voice even. I refused to be ashamed of the life I had built. I made my way to the professionally staffed bar in the conservatory, the quietest corner of the house. "A glass of Sauvignon Blanc, please," I requested. "Make it two," a friendly voice said beside me. It was Sophie, the wife of one of Liam's cousins, a warm, funny woman who always seemed as out of place as I felt. If I have to hear one more story about Little Preston's sailing trophies, I may start quoting tragic poetry aloud. I laughed, a genuine release of tension. "You're a lifesaver." "Solidarity, my friend," she said, clinking her glass against mine. We happy few, we band of out-of-place sisters." Across the room, I saw Maya emerge from the direction of the playroom, her shoulders slumped. I excused myself from Sophie and navigated the crowd to her side. "Everything all right, my love?" She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Charlotte said my dress looks homemade. And William said his dad said our car is old." My heart constricted. They were only children, but they were already fluent in the Blackwood language of comparison and judgment. I smoothed her hair, my touch a silent promise of reassurance. "Those are not very kind words, are they? And your dress is beautiful because you love it. That's all that matters." "Where's your book?" "I put it under the tree," she whispered. "Grandpa Alistair said all the gifts go there." I looked over at the mountain of exquisitely wrapped presents, all in coordinating shades of cream, gold, and forest green. I spotted Maya's small, rustic book, tied with simple twine, looking small and intensely vulnerable amongst the gloss and glitter. Genevieve materialized at my elbow, a flute of champagne in her hand. "Maya, darling, the caterers are serving miniature desserts for the children in the breakfast room. Why don't you join them?" As Maya trudged away, Genevieve turned her polished smile on me. "Elara, I've been meaning to talk to you about Maya's schooling." We've been looking into the admissions process at Brearley Hall for all the grandchildren. Of course, it's terribly selective, but with a donation and a word from Alistair. Maya is happy at her school, I said, keeping my voice level. She's thriving. Genevieve sighed, a delicate, disappointed sound. Public school is adequate, I'm sure. But the right foundation is so critical for their future. For the Ivy League applications. She's 8, Genevieve. Precisely, she said, patting my arm in a gesture that was meant to seem kind, but felt intensely patronizing. These are the formative years. If tuition is a concern, of course the family could assist. Before I could form a reply that was both polite and firm, she had drifted away to greet a new arrival, leaving me simmering. The assumption that we couldn't afford their world, or worse, that we simply didn't want it for our child, was a constant, grating theme. Liam had a very successful career, and we lived a comfortable, happy life. We just didn't measure our success by the square footage of our home or the brand of our car. I found Liam in the library with his father. Alistair Blackwood was a formidable man, with a full head of silver hair and an air of unshakable authority. They fell silent as I entered. Am I interrupting? Not at all, Liam said quickly, though his father's cool expression suggested otherwise. We were just discussing the family portfolio, Alistair said, his tone dismissive. Genevieve is probably looking for you, Alara. The dinner seating is always a puzzle. The message was clear. My place was with the women, handling domestic trifles, not in the library where real business was discussed. Actually, Liam interjected, I was just telling Dad that Maya wrote and illustrated a book of poetry for you both for Christmas. Alistair's expression remained impassive. How nice. Though Clara's boy, William, just won the state-level junior debate tournament. Only 10, and he's already being scouted by the top prep schools for their teams. Maya's teacher says her writing shows incredible promise, I said, unable to help myself. She thinks she has a real gift. A gift for what exactly? Alistair asked, his tone making it clear that a gift for poetry was not on par with one for debate or finance. Speaking of real-world accomplishments, did Liam mention we've finalized the trust structures for Clara's children? Never too early to secure their futures. The pointed exclusion of Maya from this conversation about financial security was a familiar, painful jab. I glanced at Liam, who looked down at his shoes, a flicker of discomfort on his face. He didn't challenge his father. A uniformed staff member appeared at the door. Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood has asked me to announce that dinner will be served in 5 minutes. Thank you, Robert, Alistair said, rising. We mustn't keep your mother-in-law waiting, Liam. She's been planning this menu for months. As we followed him out of the dark, wood-paneled room, Liam found my hand and squeezed it, a silent apology. I squeezed back, but a cold knot of disappointment was forming in my gut. Once again, he had let the moment pass. The tension was a palpable presence in the house, and the main event hadn't even begun. Genevieve's Christmas Eve dinner was a masterclass in formal entertaining. The long mahogany table, gleaming under the light of a crystal chandelier, was set for 30 guests. An elaborate runner of fresh greenery, white roses and gilded pine cones snaked down the center, interspersed with tall, flickering candles. Each place was marked with a calligraphed card, set beside a stack of bone china and a formidable array of sterling silver. As I'd predicted, Liam was seated near his father, deep in a conversation with a state senator. My place card was nestled between a second cousin's husband, a man I was sure I'd met but couldn't name, and Sophie, my co-conspirator from the conservatory. I sent her a small, grateful smile. Maya was at the children's table in an adjacent sunroom, a glittering tableau of miniature adults in training. If this centerpiece gets any taller, we'll need air traffic control to pass the salt, Sophie whispered to me as the first course, a lobster bisque with a swirl of saffron cream, was served. I muffled a laugh behind my napkin. Genevieve, seated at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, guided the conversation with the skill of a seasoned conductor. Clara, darling, do tell everyone about William's debate victory. The judges were apparently just astounded. The conversation flowed from there, a predictable river of Blackwood achievements. Clara's daughter had been accepted into a prestigious summer ballet intensive. Another cousin's son had launched a successful tech startup. Liam tried once to bring up Maya's book, but Genevieve smoothly redirected the topic to a recent charity auction she had chaired. I watched Maya at her table, her small face serious, as she navigated the complex social dynamics of her cousins. My heart ached for her, for the invisible weight of expectation she was already learning to carry. I focused on my meal, determined to maintain a calm exterior. The man beside me, whose name I now remembered was David, turned to me with an air of polite inquiry. "Liam tells me you're a librarian." "Yes, I'm the head librarian at the Maple Creek Public Library." "How wonderful," he said, in the same tone one might use for a child's finger painting. "My wife used to volunteer at a literacy program. She found it so rewarding to give back to the community." I simply nodded, refusing to take the bait and explain that my career was not volunteer work. By the time the main course of roasted goose with cherry sauce arrived, the conversation had shifted to real estate. Clara and her husband were closing on a ski chalet in Aspen. Another couple was renovating a historic brownstone in Beacon Hill. "And you, Liam?" Genevieve called down the table. "Still in that little house in Maple Creek?" "It's charming, of course, but Maya must be getting a bit old for that tiny backyard. Our 3-bedroom colonial with its beautiful garden was our sanctuary, but in the Blackwood lexicon, it was a starter home we had failed to outgrow." "We love our home, Mom," Liam replied, his voice diplomatic. "And Maya's school is one of the best in the state." "Well, when you're ready for something more substantial, you know your father and I are prepared to help," Genevieve said, her generosity a finely sharpened weapon. The offer hung in the air, a public declaration of our perceived inadequacy. Alistair cleared his throat, commanding the table's attention. "On that note, we've decided to take the family to St. Bart's for New Year's. Clara, Richard, will coordinate flights with you." Another pointed omission. Another awkward silence. Liam shifted in his seat, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. "Perhaps Maya could join her cousins," Genevieve offered, as if granting a great favor. "It would be a wonderful cultural experience for her." The implication was staggering. Our daughter was invited, but her parents were not. Before I could speak, my voice dangerously tight, Liam intervened. "That's a very generous offer, Mom, but we already have plans for New Year's." "We had no plans." I shot him a look of profound gratitude. As dessert was served, an intricate gingerbread castle that looked too perfect to eat, Alistair stood to make his annual toast. He raised his glass of vintage port. "To family," he began. "Our most precious asset. To Clara and Richard, for continuing to build upon the Blackwood name. To William and Charlotte, whose achievements make us all proud." He went on, a roll call of success, a verbal accounting of the family's worth. Liam, Maya, and I were conspicuously absent from his tribute. "And to a prosperous new year for all," he concluded. Glasses clinked around the table. The slight was so blatant, so public, that even Sophie looked uncomfortable. When the last of the dessert plates were cleared, Genevieve stood, clapping her hands lightly. "Now, I believe it's time for presents. Shall we move to the living room?" A spark of hope ignited in me, foolish as it was. Despite the slights and the tension, surely they wouldn't disappoint a child on Christmas Eve. Surely the magic of the holiday would prevail. I was about to learn how deeply I had underestimated their capacity for casual cruelty. The Blackwood living room was dominated by the magnificent Christmas tree, beneath which sat a breathtaking mountain of presents. The packages were all wrapped in the same 3 coordinating patterns of heavy, expensive paper, adorned with lavish satin bows and calligraphed gift tags. It was a display of abundance so overwhelming it felt more like a retail window than a family celebration. The children gathered on the thick Persian rug, their faces alight with anticipation. Even Maya, who had been quiet since dinner, seemed to have regained a sliver of her earlier excitement. She found a spot slightly apart from her cousins, her small hands clasped in her lap. I took a seat on a silk damask sofa, the knot in my stomach returning with a vengeance. Liam sat beside me, his posture rigid. Alistair, a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose, took his place by the tree, a leather-bound list in hand. He was the master of ceremonies, the sole arbiter of the evening's joy. As is our tradition, he announced, his voice booming in the high-ceilinged room, we will begin with the youngest. One by one, he called the names of the grandchildren. A staff member would gather the designated gifts and present them to the child. Clara's daughter, Charlotte, went first, receiving a pony riding package, a pearl necklace, and a child-sized designer handbag. William received a state-of-the-art drone, a full set of new skis, and a portfolio of starter stocks. Each child received a cascade of expensive, impressive gifts, each one met with oohs and ahs from the assembled adults. I watched Maya's face. With every name that was called William, Charlotte, Thomas, Sophia, her hopeful expression flickered and dimmed. She watched her cousins tear open their gifts, her own hands remaining empty in her lap. She bore it with a quiet dignity that was far more heart-wrenching than tears would have been. She just sat there, growing smaller and smaller. Liam's hand found mine, his grip crushingly tight. I glanced at him and saw a muscle working in his jaw. The eternal optimist was gone, replaced by a man simmering with a cold, quiet rage. Finally, the last of the cousins' names was called. The mountain of presents had been reduced to a small, dignified pile intended for the adults. Maya sat alone, an island of stillness in a sea of rustling paper and excited chatter, the only child in the room with nothing. A thick, uncomfortable silence descended as the adults began to register the omission. Several people exchanged uneasy glances. Sophie looked horrified. Even Clara had the decency to look away, busying herself with one of her children's new toys. Well, Alistair said, clearing his throat and looking at his list as if it were a legal document. That appears to conclude the gifts for the children. Now, for the adults, we'll begin with. Dad, Liam's voice cut through the silence, sharp and clear. You've forgotten someone. Alistair looked up, genuinely surprised. Have I? I don't think so. The list is quite clear. Genevieve rushed to smooth things over, her hostess' smile stretched thin. Oh, goodness, there must have been a simple mistake. A delivery mix-up, perhaps. Maya, darling, I'm sure your presents are here somewhere. We would never, ever forget you. But her eyes darted around the room, never landing on Maya, and I knew with a sickening certainty that this was no mistake. This was a message, delivered with devastating precision. Maya looked down at her polished shoes. It's okay, Nana Jen, she said, her voice a tiny whisper that seemed to echo in the vast room. Maybe Santa's sleigh got too full. A few people managed awkward, sympathetic chuckles. I'm sure that's it, Genevieve said, her relief palpable. We'll have them sent over tomorrow. She made no move to check the tree or the other rooms. I was about to stand up, to gather my daughter and walk out of that cold, beautiful house forever, when Liam's hand tightened on my arm, holding me in place. He stood up himself, his face a mask of calm control. Actually, he said, his voice ringing with a newfound authority that commanded the attention of every person in the room. There is one more gift. I was saving it. All eyes turned to him. Genevieve looked confused, Alistair annoyed. Liam, we discussed this, Genevieve started. All gifts are to be coordinated through me to avoid any awkwardness. Liam ignored her. He walked to where Maya sat, her small form a picture of silent disappointment. He knelt before her, his gaze soft and full of love. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out not a box, but a simple, cream-colored envelope. This is for you, my sweet girl, he said gently. From Mom and me. Maya took the envelope, her brow furrowed in confusion. She looked from Liam to me, and I gave her a small, encouraging nod, though I had no more idea what was happening than anyone else. With trembling fingers, she opened the flap. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint crackle of the fire in the hearth. She pulled out a single, ornate, old-fashioned key, tied with a simple blue ribbon. She looked at it, then back at her father. What is it, Daddy? She whispered. Liam smiled, a real smile, the first I had seen on his face all night. He took the key from her, held it up for the room to see, and then turned his gaze on his parents. It's the key to our new home, he announced, his voice steady and strong. We're moving. A collective gasp went through the room. I stared at him, my own shock rendering me speechless. Genevieve was the first to find her voice. Moving? Moving where? To a larger house in Port Blossom? We can certainly help with that. No, Liam said, his eyes never leaving his parents' faces. We're moving to Seabrook. In Oregon. If he had announced they were moving to the moon, the effect could not have been more profound. Oregon. Alistair repeated, the word dripping with disdain. Don't be ridiculous. Your life, your career, your family is here. My family, Liam said, placing a hand on Maya's shoulder, is right here. And I've just accepted a position as the head of a new sustainable investment division for a firm based in Portland. We close on the house next month. I felt tears spring to my eyes as the beautiful, stunning truth of it washed over me. He hadn't just been sitting by, letting the years of slights accumulate. He had been planning. He had been building us an escape route. You can't be serious, Alistair said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. You would throw away everything we've built for you? The connections, the legacy? There will be consequences for this, Liam. Severe financial consequences. For the first time all night, I saw Liam's shoulders relax, as if a great weight had been lifted. He actually chuckled, a soft, liberated sound. You don't get it, Dad. We don't want it. We never did. Alara and I have been saving for this for years. We're building our own legacy. One that has nothing to do with the Blackwood name. He turned back to our daughter, who was watching the exchange with wide, uncomprehending eyes. This key, Maya, he said, his voice thick with emotion, isn't just for a house. It's the key to a new life. A life where you can be exactly who you are, and you will always, always be more than enough. The spell of my shock broke, and I rose from the sofa, moving to stand beside my husband and child, my hand finding the small of Liam's back. We were a unit, a fortress of three. But Maya's small voice cut through the tension. What about my book? I made it for Nana Jen and Grandpa Al. She pointed to the small, twine-bound book, still sitting forlornly under the tree, a testament to her pure, unrequited love. The innocence of the question was a final, devastating blow to the room's composure. Several people looked down at the floor in shame. Genevieve, for the first time since I'd known her, looked utterly lost for words. Her perfect social armor had been pierced. We should go, I whispered to Liam. He nodded, then looked around the silent room one last time. Merry Christmas, everyone. He scooped Maya into his arms. Let's go home. As we walked toward the grand foyer, a voice stopped us. Liam, wait. It was Rowan, Clara's husband, a man I'd always found to be the most decent of the Blackwood inner circle. He stood up, his own face pale. He's right, Rowan said, looking at Alistair and Genevieve. This has gone too far. What you did to that little girl tonight, it was cruel. Is this what we are now? Rowan, you will sit down, Alistair commanded. But Rowan shook his head. No, I won't. We didn't stay to see the fallout. We walked out of the heavy oak doors, out of the stifling perfection of the laurels, and into the cold, clean air of the winter night. In the car, Maya was quiet for a long time, clutching the key in her small hand. Are Nana and Grandpa mad at me? She finally asked, her voice small. Liam caught my eye in the rearview mirror, his face a mixture of pain and relief. I turned in my seat to look at our daughter. No, my sweet girl, I said softly. They're not mad at you. Sometimes, adults forget what's truly important. They get lost. Like in the Whispering Woods, she asked, referencing her own story. Exactly like that, Liam confirmed, his voice thick. But you know what? Your book is so special, I think we should save it. It will be the very first thing we put on the bookshelf in our new house in Oregon. What do you think? A small smile touched her lips. Okay, she whispered. And I can write a new one. About the ocean. As we drove away, the glittering lights of the Blackwood estate receding in the darkness behind us, I reached for Liam's hand. There would be time for questions later. Time to unpack the years of planning, the secret he had kept. But in that moment, all I felt was a profound, overwhelming wave of love and gratitude for the man who had finally, unequivocally, chosen us. Thank you, I whispered into the quiet of the car. He squeezed my hand. Merry Christmas, Alara. From the back seat, Maya's voice piped up, a little stronger now. Is it still Christmas at our house? It's just beginning, I promised her. And I think it's going to be the best one ever. The drive home was a cocoon of shared silence. The questions I had were a silent, swirling galaxy in my mind, but they could wait. For now, the peace was enough. Liam pulled into the driveway of our modest, beloved home, its simple white Christmas lights a beacon of warmth against the dark. He turned off the engine, but we just sat there for a moment, the three of us, breathing in the quiet. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, he said, finally breaking the silence. He turned to face me, his features shadowed in the dim light. The job offer came through 6 months ago. The house. I found it online and made an offer last month. I was going to tell you tomorrow morning. It was supposed to be your Christmas present. 6 months. I whispered, the scale of his secret life slowly dawning on me. Liam, how? I knew if I told you, we'd talk about it, and I'd let myself be talked out of it. By my parents, by my own fear. I had to have it all locked in. An escape hatch with no turning back, he confessed, his voice raw. Tonight, seeing Maya's face. I just couldn't wait another minute. I couldn't let them have that power over us for one more second. I reached out and touched his cheek. Tell me about the house. A small, weary smile touched his lips. It's a cedar-shake cottage 100 years old, overlooking a little cove. It has a stone fireplace, a garden full of wild roses, and a small, separate studio in the back that I thought you could use for writing. Or just for being quiet. Tears welled in my eyes. He hadn't just found a house, he had found a home for my soul. And the job? I asked. It's a smaller, more ethical firm. They focus on green energy and sustainable development. It's less money, but it's more you, I finished for him. Yes, he said. It's more me. We carried a sleeping Maya inside, her body a warm, trusting weight in Liam's arms. After tucking her into bed, the ornate key resting on her nightstand, we sat on our old, comfortable sofa, the lights of our own mismatched, memory-laden Christmas tree blinking softly. I don't understand how they could do that, Liam, I said, the pain of the evening resurfacing. To deliberately leave out their own grandchild. It wasn't about Maya, he said, his voice heavy with a resignation that felt ancient. It was about me. It was a punishment. A warning. For marrying you. For choosing a different life. For not being the son they expected. They've been sending those warnings for 10 years. Tonight was just the loudest one. He looked at me, his eyes full of a decade of unspoken apologies. I am so sorry, Alara. For every time I asked you to be patient. For every time I said they were trying. I was a coward. I was so desperate for their approval that I was willing to sacrifice your happiness, and I almost sacrificed our daughters. I will never forgive myself for that. There is nothing to forgive, I said, my voice firm. You weren't a coward. You were a son, hoping his parents would love him for who he is. And tonight, you were a husband and a father. The best I could ever imagine. He pulled me close, burying his face in my hair. We sat like that for a long time, letting the truth of our new reality settle around us. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. A whole new life, an unwritten book, waiting for us across the country. The next morning, Christmas dawned crisp and bright. Maya woke up with a renewed spirit, her focus entirely on the small pile of presents under our tree and the magic key beside her bed. As she tore open gifts, books, art supplies, a new bicycle, the doorbell rang. Liam and I exchanged a nervous glance. He went to the door and returned a moment later, followed by his brother-in-law, Rowan, and his 2 children. They looked exhausted and were holding a large, hastily wrapped gift. Sorry to intrude, Rowan said, looking deeply uncomfortable. We left last night. After you did. Things got ugly. Alistair was furious that I'd taken your side. He shrugged, a gesture of weary defiance. So, we're at a hotel. But the kids insisted we bring Maya her gift. My heart swelled. Rowan's children shyly presented Maya with a huge box of professional-grade colored pencils and drawing paper. Maya, in turn, ran to her room and came back with a new, quickly drawn picture of 4 children playing on a beach. "This is for you," she said to her cousins. As the children began to draw together on the living room floor, Rowan turned to us. "Genevieve is beside herself. But not for the reasons you'd think. She's not sorry she hurt Maya, she's horrified that the family facade has cracked." "That people saw. And my father?" Liam asked. "Apocalyptic," Rowan said grimly. "He's already spoken to his lawyers. He's cutting you out of everything, Liam. The will, the family trust, everything." Liam simply nodded, his expression calm. "I know. I expected it." Rowan looked at him with a kind of awe. "You're really free, aren't you?" "We're getting there," Liam said. Later that day, after Rowan and his children had left with a promise to stay in touch, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophie. "Heard the news. Bravo. The world needs more brave people. Let me know if you need a real estate agent in Oregon. I know a good one." The biggest surprise came that afternoon, in the form of a phone call from Liam's sister, Clara. Her voice was strained. "Mother sent me to the hotel to retrieve Rowan," she said, without preamble. "He refused to come back. He said he was spending Christmas with his real family." There was a pause. "Are you really moving?" "Yes," Liam said simply. I could hear her take a shaky breath. "Well, I suppose that's that then." She sounded less angry than lost. Before she hung up, she added, almost as an afterthought, "Emma loved the book you sent her for her birthday. She keeps it by her bed." It was the closest she'd ever come to offering an olive branch. 1 year later, I am writing this from the window seat of our cedar shake cottage in Seabrook, Oregon. The air smells of salt and rain-soaked earth. Outside, the Pacific Ocean churns, a constant, soothing rhythm. Liam is in the yard with Maya, finally building the treehouse he promised her in the gnarled branches of an old cypress tree. His laughter carries on the wind, a sound I hear much more often now. My little studio is my sanctuary, filled with books and the quiet hum of my own thoughts. I volunteer at the local library, a tiny, charming building where the librarian knows every child's name. Our new life is not a fairy tale. It has been hard. We have been lonely at times. But it is ours. It is a life built on a foundation of respect and love, not obligation and performance. The ornate key sits in a small box on our mantelpiece, a reminder of the night we chose ourselves. Beside it rests Maya's first book, The Whispering Woods, its pages filled with the innocent wisdom that ultimately set us free. We hear from Rowan and his family often. They're planning a visit this summer. Clara calls occasionally, her conversations still stilted, but with a new, questioning undertone. We have received no word from Alistair. Genevieve sends Maya expensive, impersonal gifts on her birthday and at Christmas, which we politely acknowledge. The chasm remains. Perhaps it always will. But here, in the gentle light of the Oregon coast, we have found a different kind of wealth. It is the wealth of a quiet evening, a shared meal, a child's unfettered joy. It is the profound peace that comes from living an authentic life. Liam was right. He didn't just give Maya the key to a house. He gave all of us the key to a future where we could finally, truly, come home.